Chapter 35. The Awakening of the Witch. Elund hadn't intended to go looking for Morgana. Usually, the Lady of Camelot was a master of her own space, but today she seemed a creature of frayed edges and distracted glances. Without really thinking about it, Elund changed her direction, drawn by a shift in the air that felt like the static before a thunderstorm. She followed the trail past the main chambers and into the narrow, shadowed recess behind the apothecary. The air here was thick with the scent of dried yarrow and crushed lavender, and the afternoon light fell in uneven, sickly patches across the cold stone. No guess. Elund wanted him for something. However, Morgana was there, arms folded, closed up. Her posture was defensive, but she wasn't looking for an external enemy. It looked as if she was trying to keep a lid on a boiling pot that was already starting to scream. Then, Elund saw the light. It wasn't a sudden flare, but a slow, rhythmic pulse. A soft, unstable violet glow throbbed beneath the skin of Morgana's hands, flickering in intervals that didn't match the pace of her breath. Above her, a ceramic vase on a high shelf began to tremble. It shuddered, dancing a frantic little jig on the stone ledge, before it shattered completely. The fragments rained down in a sharp, brittle cascade, mirroring the breaking state of the woman below. "Aelid, a broken bar." Morgana's voice broke as she turned. Her eyes were wide, rimmed with the red exhaustion of someone who had forgotten how to sleep. "It won't stop. I can't. A broken bar. Every time I try to close my eyes, it's there. When I wake, it's worse. It's like something is burning through me." "Burning?" Elund stepped closer. Her hand dropped to the hilt of her dagger, not as a threat, but out muscle memory in response to a situation she did not yet know. "Look at me," Elund said, her voice dropping to a deliberate, grounding low. "You're not losing control. You're reacting to it. There is a difference, a good difference." Morgana let out a breath that rattled in her chest. "I can hear them," she whispered, her fingers twitching. "Not voices." "Exactly. It's more like pressure in my mind. Like something is screaming to get out." And when it does, a broken bar. Her hands tightened, the violet light flaring in response. Things break. I break things, or cause things to happen. Like the fire in my room. I don't even mean to. Elund closed the distance fully, catching Morgana's wrists. She didn't restrain them, she simply anchored them, forcing the frantic movement to slow down. "Then don't fight it all at once," Elund commanded. "Breathe first. Control the panic, or the panic will be the thing that wields the power." Morgana's grip tightened around Elund's sleeves, her knuckles turning white. "You have to tell Atha for me. A broken bar. He'll understand. A broken bar. He has to. Broken bar. He won't let them. A broken bar. He won't let Atha. A broken bar." "No," Elund said. The word was firm, unyielding. Morgana stared at her, her expression fracturing into disbelief. "No? If I tell Atha," Elund continued, forcing Morgana to meet her eyes, "then he is forced to decide what to do with the truth. You know the law. You know where it leads. By telling him, you hand him the rope and ask him to choose between his heart and his crown." "He wouldn't hurt me." Morgana's gaze faltered, her face showing her terror despite her words. "He might not want to," Elund said quietly, "but he is still Atha's son, bound to a throne built on the bones of those with magic. He's already breaking under the weight of this kingdom. A broken bar. Don't make this the thing that finally snaps him." Morgana's head bowed, her breathing finally evening out. The violet pulse beneath her skin subsided into a dull, dormant ache. "I don't know how to stop it," she admitted. "You don't stop it," Elund replied. "You learn how to hold it without letting it consume you, and until you can do that, we keep this contained." 88,888,888. Her mind drifted back to that moment as she worked in the stables a few days later. Secrets, she decided, were never weightless. The truth about Morgana was shifting and expanding, influencing every interaction in the palace, the effects rippling out, like a stone dropped into water. So, Elund began a new kind of work. A broken bar. A quiet, dangerous sort of map-making. She knew Morgana's containment was failing. Camelot was a cage that would eventually crush her from inside. Between her duties in the stables and her patrols on the battlements, Elune started clearing the way. She noted the changeover times of the guards at the north gate and learned which paths through the lower forest were currently unmonitored by Arthur's scouts. She was building a bridge to the only people who could help Morgana survive what she was becoming, Mordred and the Druids. It was treason, pure and simple, but Elune saw it as a mercy. Before she was trapped within Camelot with no options, she would send word to Círdan, to let him know that there would be a refugee they would be interested in helping. 88,888,888 mornings were Elune's favorite times. She was sitting against the stonework of the castle, watching the squires set up for the training on the lower field. Every morning, Arthur seemed to be arriving earlier and earlier, leaning harder into his duties, seeking the uncomplicated warmth of Gwen's company as if her goodness could act as a dam against the rising tide of his own doubts. He had knighted her, more or less, but Elune did not go down to the field. That morning, Arthur eventually tracked Elune to the stables. She was elbow deep in the repetitive, mindless work of grooming, using the physicality of the task to drown out her thoughts. "You've been difficult to find," Arthur said, leaning against the wooden stall. His tone was light, but his eyes were searching. "I was starting to think you were avoiding me." Elune didn't look up. Her brush moved steadily along the horse's flank. "If I were avoiding you, Arthur, you wouldn't have found me." Arthur exhaled, a sound between a laugh and a sigh. "Fair point, then I'll take what I can get." He hesitated, his posture stiffening. "Scouts found markings near the north ridge. Druid symbols. My father wants a sweep." A full one. Elune's hand slowed, the bristles catching on the horse's coat. If Arthur swept the north ridge now, he would destroy the very path she was laying for Morgana. "And you?" she asked. "I think we should find out who they are before we decide what they deserve," he said, stepping closer. "But that sentiment doesn't carry much weight in the council chambers lately." Elune let the brush fall still. "The woods aren't empty, Arthur. But not everything in them is a threat to you. If you go up there with swords drawn, you'll only find what you're looking for, an enemy." "That sounds like a warning, an observation." He took a step closer to her. Elune hardened her heart, and ignored his physical closeness. "And if I ignore it?" She finally looked at him then, her gaze steady and uninterpretable. "Then you risk turning something avoidable into something inevitable." Arthur's brow furrowed. "You're not telling me everything." "I can feel it, Aled." "No one in this city reveals everything, Arthur. Not even to themselves." A heavy pause settled between them, smelling of hay and old, unspoken things. Arthur made to say something, but instead, turned, and paced away from her. Elune took a towel from the pile near the tack room, heading toward the small washing area to clear the dust of the stables from her skin before heading back into the castle. It had surprised her that things had gone so well with Morgana, all things considered. She'd had a very difficult task to do, in telling a woman of the royal house that her own nature was a death sentence in this city and that she had to trust Elune to hide it. There could have been much more confrontation, she thought, considering denials. Morgana could even have gone to Arthur herself and disclosed to him that Elune was a traitor and was using her defense of magic against Camelot. The basin was soon full of cool water and Elune splashed her face, feeling her muscles untense. Maybe it was because Morgana had little choice in it, she thought as she tipped her head back, or because they had come to accept a little of what the other was saying, or perhaps it was because they accepted each other to some degree. Whatever it was, at least they weren't at each other's throats. Elune stopped and let her mind dwell on Gwaine, who had been occupying Elune's thoughts since she had returned from Nice Monday. He had asked her for a drink, and Elune, despite her better judgment, had agreed. He was waiting for her at the Rising Sun later that night. When he saw her, the weary cynicism on his face vanished, replaced by a warmth that made Elune's chest ache. "I thought you'd forgotten the way to the lower town," he murmured, his voice a low, gentle. "Hard to forget when the rest of the world is screaming," she replied, sliding onto the bench beside him. Gwaine didn't ask about the politics of the court. He simply reached out, his calloused thumb tracing the line of her jaw. He could see the exhaustion in her shoulders, the specific strain of someone walking two paths at once. She did not pull away. but instead, thoughts of Arthur flashed through her mind, her heart wishing it was the prince touching her. "You're carrying a lot in your mind again," he whispered. "Let it drop for an hour. The walls won't fall if you take a breath." Alcohol flowed, and Elune loosened up. It was to her regret in the morning, but then, it had been what she needed to relax. Gawain had found a room above the tavern, and Elune let herself soften. She curled into him, the scent of leather and rain acting as the only truth she wanted to believe in. The morning would bring the lies, the maps, and the steel back into her hands, but here, she found the strength to keep standing in the shadows. She was Arthur's shield and also, now, Camelot's traitor, something she had sworn to Arthur she never had been, never was, nor never would be. But as she watched the moonlight hit the citadel walls later that night from the safety of Gawain's arms, his skin on hers, Elune realized that to save the prince, and to save Morgana, she might eventually have to make sure she was never in Arthur's company at all.